Thank you, Mr Holloway, and also to my honourable friend for Guston and Hellwood for tabling this very timely debate and for the manner in which she opened it this afternoon. I am honoured to be among colleagues representing constituencies on Merseyside, especially in the face of a Tory government which I believe has chosen to impose unfair and disproportionate cuts on our constituents. And I use the word chosen very carefully because, as we know, austerity is a choice which only makes the damage done to the lives of our constituents so much worse. But it's not just what's in the pot, it's how the government have chosen to cut it up, hitting the most deprived the hardest because they have removed the waiting for deprivation from so many of their funding formulas. And as we saw in the budget yesterday, these cuts will not be going away anytime soon, despite the Prime Minister promising us that austerity is over earlier this month. Tory cuts have hit Merseyside so hard that Liverpool City Council has seen a £444 million reduction in its government support since 2010-11, and that's a cut of 64% to our council's overall budget. We are at the point in which our most basic services are in crisis, and many of my colleagues have articulated so many examples of where that is the case. Services such as Merseyside Fire and Rescue, which has seen a reduction in its total revenue budget from £73 million to £59.9 million. And while these may just be figures on a spreadsheet to some, these cuts have real-life consequences. Our Fire and Rescue Authority has been forced to reduce the number of firefighters it employs from 923 down to 620, and the number of fire engines from 42 to just 24. And in turn, the response time for life-risk incidents is on average 35 seconds slower than it was in 2010-11. What if there was a major incident in our region on Merseyside? Similarly, my colleagues have articulated well the impact to Merseyside police force, which has also faced startling cuts from central government, and many other colleagues have articulated the connection between local authority funding and our police and how we are disproportionately hit. We've seen our workforce from the police cut by nearly a quarter. We've seen now 1,600 fewer police staff since 2010-11. And I ask the Minister to really reflect on this point. I hope that he's listening carefully, because ultimately the combination of all these cuts to our local authority, to our fire, to our police service, they have led to a reduction in the level of service for so many different community services, which we can see throughout the life course, from our children's centres through to our youth services, to our leisure and our recreation service, to what happens on our roads, to our community services, to services for the elderly, to social care. We have an incredibly stretched council, fire service and police workforce which do so much in such challenging circumstances. And what we're seeing is an impact on real life for too many of our constituents. We're seeing an increase of people in crisis. Now, we are here because we think it's socially and morally illiterate to see so many people in crisis. It's also financially illiterate. And we sat here in front of a minister from the Department for Communities, Local Government and Housing, but this has far-reaching and wider consequences on all departments of government. We heard about the impact on our National Health Service. We're going to see £20 billion extra spent on our NHS. But again, this disproportionate focus on crisis is so much more expensive, it doesn't make any economic sense. Other colleagues have very clearly articulated the impact and the increase that we're seeing in crime. And I just reflect on the fact that we are now seeing our most brutal run of gun violence in Liverpool in recent years. And just in a 10-day period at the beginning of this month, there have been 2 fatal shootings, of which one was in my own constituency, and 4 other non-fatal shootings. This increase in serious crime has very far-reaching and serious consequences for our constituents. However, it's not until you compare the cuts that we've sustained on Merseyside to those elsewhere that you truly see the disproportionate level of austerity that our constituents have been burdened with, where each household in Merseyside has faced a cut of £712.57. The average reduction per household across England is just £320.99. Now, that is still an unwarranted reduction, but of course, nowhere near the level that the people of Merseyside are having to cope with in one of the most deprived areas of the country. And it's nothing short of a tragedy that the government's own figures have shown that had Liverpool City Council been subject to the same average reduction, then it would have been £71.6 million better off in 2019-20 than it is currently expected to be. And what is worse and most galling, that in some authorities we've seen an increase in their spending power, which, again, colleagues have referenced, sorry. The neglect by the Tory government is nothing new to the people of Merseyside, whose independence and resilience makes our region proudly what it is. And our city, under the leadership of Joe Anderson, is doing so much in spite of this government. But, Minister, in conclusion, can you tell us when our constituents are going to be given the equal chance and some relief from this disproportionate burden?